At Christmas, just as the tree lights flickered on and the scent of pine mingled with cinnamon and baked cookies, my sister, Lila, stood up mid-dinner and announced, "We voted, and cut you off." The words hit me like a snowball thrown straight to the chest. I froze, fork halfway to my mouth, as my extended family turned toward me, their faces a mixture of shock and awkward curiosity. The soft hum of Christmas music in the background now felt like an ironic soundtrack to my sudden humiliation. Lila, my older sister by 3 years, had always been a force of nature. Confident, sharp-tongued, and persuasive, she had a way of commanding attention even in the quietest room. Our relationship had always been complicated. We had shared childhood fights, secret alliances, and occasional moments of camaraderie, but under it all lingered an unspoken competition. She had the charm, the charisma, the influence, and I had always been the quieter one, overlooked but careful, watching, observing. "Excuse me?" I managed, my voice a mix of disbelief and forced calm. Lila's smirk widened, a glint of triumph in her eyes. "You heard me. The family has decided. No more support financially, emotionally, or otherwise. It's final." My heart raced. I had always been close to our parents, helping out where I could, trusting Lila to act as an ally when family matters were discussed. And now this sudden vote, this public declaration, felt like a betrayal scripted to humiliate me. But there was something off, something that made me hesitate before reacting. Her tone was too controlled, too precise. The words were sharp, yes, but measured, like she had practiced this moment in front of a mirror 1,000 times. And while she smiled at the gasps of our cousins and the fidgeting of my parents, there was a flicker in her eyes, a hesitation, almost imperceptible, that suggested the story wasn't finished. I scanned the table. Our parents avoided my gaze, smiling weakly but not contradicting her. Cousins whispered, some nodding, some unsure. And then it hit me, this wasn't just about me. Something had shifted behind the carefully polished mask of our family's holiday cheer. Lila was orchestrating something bigger, something that went beyond petty sibling rivalry. I forced myself to breathe slowly, to let the shock settle into something more analytical. There had to be a reason. There had to be more to this. And as I reached for my glass of water, my mind started ticking, strategies, questions, suspicions. Lila may have thought she had cut me off, severed my ties, and claimed victory. But beneath her confident smirk, I sensed cracks. And those cracks were going to be the first step in a reckoning she would never see coming. The days after that fateful Christmas dinner felt like living in a storm just beyond the window, quiet, but charged with tension. Lila acted normal around me, her voice sugar-coated, her smiles practiced, as if nothing had happened. But the red flags were impossible to ignore. It started with favoritism. Small things at first, our parents suddenly heeding her advice more than mine, gifts subtly aligned with her preferences, family discussions shifting in her favor. I had always been part of these decisions, but now it felt like I had been erased, my input dismissed as irrelevant. Then came the whispers. Calls she would take in the next room, hushed conversations, laughter cut short whenever I approached. I tried to convince myself they were harmless, perhaps planning holiday events or catching up with distant friends. But each secretive glance, each smothered chuckle, tightened the pit in my stomach. Money became the next battlefield. Lila had always been responsible with finances, but now she controlled more than her share, redirecting family contributions, borrowing funds from the holiday budget with casual explanations I couldn't fully track. Bills I once handled smoothly now arrived with confusing notes or last-minute changes, all justified with a tone of innocent efficiency, but beneath it, I sensed manipulation. The lies were subtle, almost surgical. She would claim decisions were unanimous, even when I had heard dissenting voices. She would give vague reasons for actions she'd taken alone, carefully avoiding specifics. When I asked questions, she smiled and deflected, leaving me questioning whether I was overreacting. Every interaction became a test of restraint. At first, I wanted to confront her immediately, demand the truth, and reclaim what she had stripped from me. But I noticed the way she watched me when I faltered, the almost imperceptible satisfaction in her expression when I hesitated. She was enjoying this. And that realization scared me more than any betrayal I could have imagined. Emotionally, I felt like I was unraveling. The Christmas cheer that once filled our home was replaced with a tense quiet. I replayed conversations in my mind, dissecting every tone, every pause, every smile. My confidence wavered, replaced by doubt and anxiety. Had I really been naive all these years? Or was this manipulation intentional, calculated, designed to make me doubt myself before striking harder? The most unsettling part was that nothing was concrete yet. No smoking gun. No confession. Only the creeping, gnawing feeling that the sister I had trusted, and sometimes loved, was orchestrating something far bigger than a simple disagreement. I began to watch and wait, observing her every move, cataloging details in my mind. Each gesture, each word, each carefully timed smile became a piece of a puzzle I didn't yet fully understand, but one thing was certain: the sister who had announced I was cut off at Christmas had a plan. And I was going to find out what it was, before it was too late. It wasn't until I returned home late one evening, sifting through family documents for a routine matter, that the full extent of Lila's betrayal revealed itself. At first, it seemed almost absurd, a misplaced form, an old statement. But as I dug deeper, the truth hit me like ice water. She hadn't just cut me off emotionally, she had been quietly seizing control of the family trust and inheritance. Deeds, investment accounts, insurance policies, all subtly redirected into her name, bypassing me entirely. The vote she had announced at Christmas? That wasn't just symbolic. It was a legal maneuver she had orchestrated with the help of a few compliant relatives, carefully masked under the guise of a family consensus. My hands shook as I spread the documents across the dining table. Every signature forged, every account rerouted, every verbal assurance she had ever given, lies. My heart raced, and the room spun. I felt betrayed in a way I hadn't imagined. The sister I had once confided in, the one I had trusted implicitly, had not only turned against me, she had weaponized our family against me. Anger surged, hot and immediate, but so did disbelief. How could someone I shared childhood secrets and holidays with, someone I had once admired, be capable of this calculated, cold-blooded manipulation? I felt a hollow ache in my chest, a mix of grief and fury. The humiliation of being blindsided in front of the family gnawed at me, but the magnitude of her deceit cut even deeper. I reread the documents again, heart hammering. Lila's plan was meticulous. She hadn't acted out of impulse, this was premeditated. Each transfer, each notarized change, each whispered conversation with relatives had been part of a strategy to isolate me, disempower me, and secure everything for herself. The more I pieced together, the clearer it became: she hadn't just betrayed me as a sibling, she had attacked my very life, my future, my security. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to throw the papers in her face and demand answers. But deep down, I knew that any emotional reaction would play into her hands. She thrived on control, and showing my vulnerability would only feed her sense of victory. Instead, a cold clarity began to take hold. This betrayal, devastating as it was, had also exposed the blueprint of her plan. Every document, every lie, every forged signature, she had left me the map to undo her. My heartbreak began to morph into determination. I realized that the next steps weren't about crying or pleading, they were about strategy. Precision. Timing. And when I acted, Lila would discover the most bitter truth: the sister she thought she had destroyed was already preparing to take everything back. The seed of revenge had been planted. And it was growing fast. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table, the stolen warmth of Christmas long gone, surrounded by the evidence of Lila's betrayal. The papers spread before me were like shards of glass, each one cutting a little deeper, every forged signature, every rerouted account, every whispered lie. My chest ached, my hands trembled, and yet somewhere beneath the hurt, a spark ignited. It started with a simple thought: she thinks she's untouchable. For years, I had let her charm and dominance overshadow me, accepting the subtle hierarchy she had built in our family. But now I saw it clearly. Every carefully orchestrated move she had made left traces, footprints of deceit that she hadn't thought I'd notice. The very evidence that devastated me was also a weapon. And then it hit, the trigger moment. I remembered Christmas dinner, the smugness in her voice, the way she smiled as the family absorbed her announcement. She thought that single moment had crushed me, that it marked my end. But it was the moment that lit a fire inside me. She had underestimated my patience, my observation, my resolve. That smirk, that overconfidence, would be the reason she fell. I straightened, hands steady now, and felt the shift. Hurt was still there, yes, but hurt was fuel. Anger alone would have been destructive, but clarity made it powerful. I realized that I didn't need to confront her blindly, didn't need to yell or expose my pain immediately. I had something far stronger, a plan, built on her own mistakes, and the patience to see it through. Every detail she had left behind became a step in my strategy. I could anticipate her moves, gather undeniable proof, and dismantle her manipulation piece by piece. I felt a strange exhilaration, calm, methodical, unstoppable. For the first time in years, I wasn't reacting. I was preparing. I allowed myself a quiet, fierce smile. Lila had tried to erase me, to make me powerless. But she had miscalculated. I wasn't the sibling she had pushed aside, I was the storm she hadn't seen coming. And every shred of evidence she had left in her wake would be the instrument of her downfall. That night, surrounded by papers and the shadows of the empty kitchen, I made a vow: I would reclaim what was mine. I would restore my future. And I would do it with precision, patience, and power. The girl she thought she had cut off was no longer frightened. She was awakened, resolute, and ready. And when I moved, Lila would realize too late that the sister she betrayed had become unstoppable. I didn't confront Lila. Not yet. That was the most important part of the plan. She believed Christmas had ended me, that her announcement had sealed my fate. I needed her comfortable, careless, convinced she'd already won. Step 1 was evidence, real, undeniable proof. I began quietly requesting copies of old trust documents, framing it as personal records for tax purposes. I compared versions line by line, highlighting altered clauses, changed beneficiaries, and dates that didn't align. The pattern was clear: revisions made without full consent, signatures added when certain family members weren't even present. Step 2 was corroboration. I reached out, carefully, to relatives who had been silent at Christmas. I didn't accuse. I asked questions. Innocent ones. Do you remember voting on this? Were you there when this was signed? Confusion surfaced quickly. Some hesitated. Others admitted they'd trusted Lila to handle the details. Every uncertain answer was logged. Every contradiction became another crack in her story. Then came the financial trail. I tracked account numbers tied to the trust and followed them through public filings and bank records. Transfers that didn't match distributions. Funds rerouted through shell accounts. Money that disappeared just long enough to resurface under her control. It was meticulous work, slow, exhausting, but every discovery tightened the noose. While I worked, I played my role perfectly. I stayed quiet. Polite. Slightly distant, but not suspicious. I let Lila feel powerful. I listened as she spoke confidently about family unity and moving forward. I even thanked her once for handling things. The satisfaction in her eyes told me everything. I was exactly where she wanted me. That's when I set the trap. I casually asked her for a copy of the final trust agreement, pretending I needed it for a personal matter. She sent it without hesitation. And in doing so, she handed me the final piece, an updated document that directly contradicted the version she had previously claimed was approved by everyone. Lie confirmed. Intent proven. I compiled everything into a single, devastating timeline, before Christmas, during the announcement, after the vote. Each document cross-referenced. Each lie highlighted. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was inheritance theft, planned and executed with precision and arrogance. The tension grew heavier every day. Family dinners. Group messages. Lila still played the benevolent leader, unaware she was walking straight toward exposure. I could feel the climax approaching, like thunder building behind the clouds. She thought the family stood behind her. She thought I was isolated. She thought Christmas was the end of my story. But the truth was far more dangerous. Everything was ready. And when I finally spoke, it wouldn't be to accuse. It would be to reveal. The reckoning came at the next family gathering, Sunday lunch, Lila's idea. She wanted to show unity, to cement her authority after Christmas. The house was full again, parents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Laughter echoed. Plates clinked. On the surface, everything looked normal. Lila stood at the head of the table, confident, radiant, already playing the role of the responsible heir. That's when I stood up. I think we should clear something up, I said calmly. My voice didn't shake. Every head turned. Layla's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. I placed a thick folder on the table, the same way she had metaphorically done to me at Christmas. Then I connected my laptop to the TV. The screen lit up. "What is this?" she asked, laughing lightly. "Is this a joke?" "It's the vote," I replied. "The one you said we all agreed on." The first document appeared, the original trust agreement. Then the altered version. Clauses highlighted in red. Beneficiary names changed. Dates that didn't match. Gasps rippled through the room. "I never signed that," my aunt said slowly. "That meeting never happened," my uncle added. Lila's face drained of color. "You don't understand," I kept going. Bank records followed. Transfers timed just days before Christmas. Funds routed through temporary accounts before landing in one place, hers. Then messages. Emails. Proof that she had claimed family approval where none existed. "This isn't confusion," I said evenly. "It's inheritance theft." Silence crashed down like a wave. My parents stared at the screen, devastated. Lila stood frozen, opening and closing her mouth, scrambling for control that no longer existed. Then came the final blow. "I didn't bring this just for the family," I continued. Copies were already submitted to a lawyer and a financial auditor last week. The trust is frozen. Accounts flagged. An investigation is underway. Lila exploded. She shouted. Accused me of betrayal, jealousy, manipulation. But every word only made it worse. The more she spoke, the clearer it became who had been lying all along. Security from the bank arrived before dessert. Formal. Polite. Final. They handed her documents she couldn't argue with. The woman who had stood at Christmas and announced I was cut off was now the one being stripped of authority, of money, of credibility. I watched quietly as the family turned away from her, one by one. No shouting. No drama. Just truth settling into place. She had tried to erase me in public. So I ended her illusion the same way, in front of everyone. And this time, there was no but then, to save her. The days after the revelation were surreal. Lila had retreated completely, her confidence shattered, her influence evaporated like snow under the winter sun. The family trust was restored, the accounts frozen pending final audits, and the relatives who had once followed her lead now looked at me with a mixture of awe and relief. I walked through the house, the weight of betrayal replaced by something stronger, freedom. For years, I had carried the subtle fear of being undermined, the quiet anxiety of sibling rivalry turned weaponized. Now, that fear was gone, replaced by clarity and resolve. The sister who tried to destroy me had failed, and in doing so, had revealed herself completely, her arrogance, her greed, her manipulations, all laid bare for everyone to see. It wasn't about revenge in the moment anymore, it was about reclaiming my life. The Christmas dinner that had been meant to humiliate me now became a turning point, a story of resilience, patience, and strategic brilliance. My family recognized the truth, and more importantly, I recognized my own strength. I allowed myself a quiet smile, remembering the smug expression on her face that night of the announcement. The girl who thought she could erase me had instead written the prologue to her own downfall. Every secret she hid, every lie she spun, became the instruments of her undoing. To anyone watching this, hear me clearly, betrayal can feel like a final defeat. It can shake your trust, your confidence, even your sense of self. But it can also be the spark that awakens strength you never knew you had. Have you ever been blindsided by someone you trusted, someone you thought loved you? Share your story in the comments, your experience matters, and your resilience matters even more. The poetic justice is simple, yet chilling. Lila had planned to cut me off, to make me powerless. She thought she was the victor. But victory is fragile when built on deception. And those who betray often fail to see that the person they wronged quietly watches, quietly plans, and eventually rises stronger than ever. I emerged not just unbroken, but unstoppable. The sister who had stood in front of the family, announcing my supposed end, had been defeated not by force, not by confrontation, but by strategy, patience, and truth. She thought she was the storm. But in the end, I became the hurricane. Subscribe if you believe in justice served perfectly, and remember, never underestimate the quiet ones, they are often the ones rewriting the story.